Hey, his truck's not bad either. It's a 2011 Silverado, 3500 HD. This thing makes almost 400 horsepower, and it has a ton of torque.
All right, so here's the deal, right? Michael's got all this toys and stuff like that. He works during the week, puts a lot of miles on the truck. Over the weekend, he's going all over the Southeast going to these fishing tournaments, so he's putting even more miles on it. So we want to help him kind of step it up a little bit so he can stay on the road longer and be more efficient about it.
Hey, you know what? I don't want to have to ask you again. Can you please put some shoes on? It's getting weird.
I thought we were going out, dude. Sorry.
With the truck up in the air, the first thing we want to do is drain out the trans fluid. Now, this is a new truck, and it probably hasn't been changed yet. These trucks today, they're coming with a semi-synthetic blend from the factory, but we want to go ahead and swap it out with a full synthetic from front to back. Now that we got the trans fluid drained out, what we can do is pull the pan. You see, one of the other things we're going to do to this truck is put a new shift kit in place. To do that, we need to get the existing valve body out of the way because we need to do some modifications to it. Now with the valve body out of the truck, we can begin our shift kit upgrade. Now everything you see right here is what we need to do that conversion. Now you've got all the internal components here to modify the valve body, and you got the auxiliary stuff you need as well, like the deeper pan here. This will give us a couple extra quarts of capacity and help the thing run a little cooler. Now with that, you're going to need the extended inside filter. What that'll do is make sure that we're picking up from the bottom of the pan itself, and you've got the bracket here to hold it into place. We've also got the external filter. Now, the reason we're doing this upgrade is really twofold. The first one is we're going to get more clamping power. You see, this truck is used constantly under heavy load and it's doing heavy towing. So with the more clamping power, it's going to give it better towing capacity as well as more longevity of the transmission. The other thing this will do is give us quicker, crisper shifts. Now, you won't notice driving it around town every day, but it'll come in really handy when you're doing towing up hills or if you're trying to merge into traffic, allow you to get down the road. Now it's time to do our modifications. The first thing we need to do is discard the original trim valves and springs on the small end. Then we're going to place the outer springs over the small end of the trim valves and insert them into the valve body. With that all in place, it's now time to open up the valve body to get to the separator plate. There we need to drill out 2 small holes with an 1/8 inch drill bit. Once the holes are drilled and they're deburred, we can go ahead and reassemble the valve body and put our trans back together.
The next step was to come back here and drain the gear oil out of the rear differential. We're going to replace that with the SX7000 from Mystic. Now the same principles apply back here as far as the synthetics go. Extended wear protection, more longevity. And think about how important it is back here, just like it is everywhere else in the system, but back here with all the driving and the thousands and thousands of miles and pulling all the trailers, there's going to be a lot going on in this rear differential, and you want to keep that thing as safe and protected as possible. That's the name of the game. So we pop the cover off, and we're actually almost ready to put the cover back on and fill it up. Couple things to keep in mind. When you take this off, you want to make sure this surface up here and the surface on the cover are as clean as possible. Get all the old RTV off. That's how it came from the factory. Now, there's still some people that think you got to go to the dealership or go to the store and get a gasket for this too. That's not the case. It came with RTV from the factory, and that's good enough. You can do that and make a nice gasket yourself. There's a couple different ways of going about this as well. So one of the ways we like to do is just kind of go around the bolt holes right there. You just kind of draw it out like that. This is one of those things where you could talk to 3 different people and get 3 different ways of going about it. So the important thing is you make sure you get a good amount around those bolt holes right there, because it could leak around there. So you want to make sure your gasket's good. Now, you don't want to knock this down and make it totally flat, but I've knocked down the hills. That way, when I put this cover back on and I stick it onto the diff, I don't have a bunch rolling inside or rolling out, and I don't have a big mess. And this just makes a nice, thick gasket, and everything should be good.
Everything we've been doing on this truck here today is for one purpose, to keep it going down the road longer. So in order to keep with that theme, we're going to go ahead and replace this fuel tank with a new one. Now, I know you might be thinking, well, why would you take a perfectly good fuel tank out of a brand new truck? Well, the reason is we were going to add capacity. The one on this truck only comes with a 34-gallon capacity. By just about doubling it, we're going to allow him to go longer intervals down the road. He won't have to stop so much. It'll make his life a whole lot easier.
So when you're taking out the stock tank, there's obviously a couple of things you need to take care of. You disconnect the fuel lines right there. We got the filler neck, that's disconnected. Had 2 big bands right down here. Those are out of the way. They were holding the tank into place. Then we dropped it down a couple inches so that Bruno could get at some other things that were up on the top there.
Yeah, there's a vent line and a plug attached to the sending unit. You want to get those out of the way, and then you can lower it the rest of the way down. Key thing you want to keep in mind is empty out the diesel fuel. It'll make life a whole lot easier. Not only will you not have a big mess, but it'll make the tank a whole lot lighter. We're also using a trans jack right here to support everything and make our job a little bit easier as well.
And welcome back. Now we got the stock tank out of the way, and this is a great time to take a look side by side with the new tank that we're putting in. We got this one from Titan Fuel Tanks, and it's a lot bigger. I mean, you take a look, 34 gallons here, good sized tank, but we're stepping it up to 60 gallons right here. The idea was to let our buddy stop less when he's driving, right? Spend more time on the road. Everything's going to be more efficient, especially work. So he's going to be able to accomplish that with this. This is nice. It's all molded. It looks good. And we're going to be able to reuse some of the pieces and parts from this one to move them over. And it's got all the bracketry and hardware that we need as well. So everything's here.
Yeah, it's a neat looking tank. It's custom molded to fit all the contours underneath the truck, and what's nice about it is the fact it's made of a high-grade polyethylene. It's a military grade, which makes this thing really strong, but yet it keeps it light, so it's easy to move around, and it's not going to add a bunch of unwanted weight to the truck. Now all we have to do is transfer over all our stock stuff to the new tank, like these fuel lines. All that stuff will still work. Now they make a special tool to take off this outer clamp, but if you don't have one, you just use a hammer and a chisel, and it usually comes off pretty easily. There we go.
There you go.
Now, before you pull out the sending, you want to make a mental note as to where it's clocked in relation to the tank. This way, you put it in the same spot on the new tank, and all your lines will still work.
Now, when you're coming through and you're getting ready to slide that in, another thing you want to do real quick before we insert it right down there is to double check and make sure there's no junk down in here. When we got it, it was nice and clean. We just want to make sure we didn't get anything down in there. Nobody was playing paper toss with the new tank when we weren't looking.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
It still looks, everything looks good. All right.
There you go.
So we'll get that. Now this will slide in, and we're gonna have this sitting kind of in this position. Now you mentioned the clocking of it all. Let me move these out of the way for now, right? So this needs to sit right about there, but we're gonna have an issue when we plug in these two lines right here with these bolts. So what we need to do is trim this tab a little bit. So Bruno, if you, give me a straight cut there. Yep. And then maybe from the corner in. Okay. And that should help us line up. That tab's not really doing anything. We can trim that up a little bit.
So make sure you don't drop it in the tank.
Yeah, well, we don't need the whole tab. All right, so now that turns us perfect. We can line up our lines. We won't have any trouble when we put this ring on either. So now we can get this in place and secure it down, and our lines will line up just right.
Now when you're tightening this thing down, you'll notice we're using new hardware. We're not using this clamping ring. We want to torque these down to 20 foot-pounds, but do it so in a star pattern. This way that you've got a nice even pull as it comes down, and it'll seal well. You won't have any fuel leaks. Now before you can bring this fuel tank up into place, you've got to clearance the chassis right there. So we went ahead and got that tube out of the way. Now this will be able to fit up over the cross member and be locked up into place. Now the guys from Titan don't only make these for the 2011 Silverado, they've got fuel tanks for just about any American diesel truck that's $19.99 and newer.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Pump it up there, big man.
All right.
Welcome back to TruckU. Now today we're working on this 2011 Chevrolet, and we're building it up so the guy can do a lot more hauling with it, and we're also working on it so he can keep it on the road longer. That's the whole idea of what we're doing here today. Now we've drained all the oil out, we've got that taken care of. While we're down here, we're going to go ahead and grease up these ball joints down here. It's a good time to do that. I think I'm almost got it done. We're just going to grease that up until we can start to see it coming out the top a little bit. Then we'll clean it up. All right, it's creeping out there. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're using the right grease. On these chassis components right here, you want to use a grease that's got superior shock load protection. Here's what's going to happen on the front end when he's driving up and down the road. It's going to be getting pounded, you know, hitting the bumps, all the driving, this, that, the other. Water's going to get in there and try to wash that grease out. So you need that shock load protection right there. That's going to keep the grease in there so that it can do the job that you want it to do. Now on a wheel bearing type situation, you want a grease that's got a higher dropping out point. What that means is it's going to operate on those higher temperatures, and it's not going to break down into liquid form and fling out on you. It's also going to stay where you want it. Now the good thing is about the Mystic JT6, it's a combination grease that we can use for both of those applications. Now let's play grease trivia. This is going to be fun. Grab that tube of grease that you've got sitting next to you and take a look down to the bottom, and you're going to look for these initials. You might see GC or LB. Now, when you take a look at those and you say, what does that mean, right? What kind of industry jargon is that? Well, the GC means that that grease is specifically made for like your wheel bearing applications. And the LB tells you that it's more for the chassis style components. Or if it's a combination grease like the JT6, you see both initials on there and you know you can use it for either one of those jobs. We mentioned that we want to run full synthetics throughout this truck, and we want to do that for a couple different reasons, because there are some big advantages, and we're going to go with the Mystic JT8 5W40. It's a full synthetic heavy-duty motor oil, and like I said, one of the big advantages is the fact that it's got great cold temperature startup and pumpability. Now that's a big deal, especially if you live up north where it's cold, you know, because all the damage is done on startup. So the sooner you can get that oil circulating, the better off you're going to be, and it's going to have less wear and tear. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. We're going to control the wear, control the deposit formation, and that's going to keep this engine living a lot longer. And of course, the Mystic JT8 it meets and exceeds all of the fuel economy and emission standards.
Now, when we're under the hood, it's a good time to go ahead and upgrade this stock air intake system with a new one from Air Raid. Now, we're going to go with the MXP series, and what's nice about it is it's a direct replacement for the stock one. You know, you get this big air intake box. It's got these huge cutouts. It's going to allow this engine to draw in a lot more cold air. And you pair it up with this high-performance filter, the whole thing's going to breathe a lot better. Now, you know, if the engine's breathing better, it's going to perform better, be more efficient, which means better fuel economy and more power. And you know what? It only takes a few minutes to do. Just about anybody can do one of these upgrades. The cost is, well, really insignificant, because think about it. The more you drive this truck, the more efficient it's going to be, the more it's going to pay you back in the long run. All we have to do then is swap out these two existing sensors, put it on the new box, and this thing's ready to go. There we go.
The vast majority of the wear and tear on your engine takes place during startup. That is why the oil is the lifeblood of the engine. So the quicker we can get that blood pumping, the healthier everything is going to be. Nowhere is that more crucial than in cold weather conditions, because a lot of oils are kind of like me when it's cold. They're a little bit slow moving. So what we did was we took two examples right here. We've got a standard 15W40, which is indicative of what a lot of people are using, versus the synthetic JT8 from Mystic. That's the 5W40, and we took the temperature on that, and that came out at about 17 degrees. We stuck these babies in the freezer to kind of simulate some cold weather conditions. That's basically what it would look like, you know, if your truck was sitting in the garage overnight or maybe in the front of your house. So now we can take a look at this. So your engine's starting up, right? This is the engine, and we want to see how quickly this oil is going to circulate through. Now you take a look at this and look at the synthetic. That is rolling through nice and quick. Everything's getting lubricated. And there's your standard 15W40, and you can see how slow that's happening. So there's the wear and tear. The quicker you can get the blood pumping, the healthier everything's going to be.
So a high-flow air filter is now in place, and these come in oiled or non-oiled depending on your application. As you can see, this whole Air Raid system fits really well inside here. This one-piece molded box looks good. It fits well. We transferred over the filter checker, the mass airflow sensor. It's all tightened down. This thing's made in the United States, and it's going to help this thing breathe better, which is a win-win all the way around.